The content discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial or mortgage advice. Always consult with a licensed professional before making any decisions regarding mortgages or financial matters.
Welcome to the Canadian Mortgage Show. Here are mortgage professionals Alex Pang and Alex Shanks to cut through the BS and educate Canadians on all things mortgages and real estate.
Welcome to another episode of the Canadian Mortgage Show. I'm your host, Alex Pang, along with my co-host, Alex Shanks. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't know if I'm in the future right now. Is it 9 o'clock? Is it 8 o'clock? What time are we actually at right now?
Oh man, this daylight savings time, for those of you, the rest of the country, on the West Coast, we had to dial back our clocks 2 days ago, right? And man, that 1 hour is a big difference. It's like dark at 5 p.m. now. Can you believe that? Just so that we can get light at what, 7? Is that what the whole deal is?
All to do the farmers. It's meant to help the farmers, which there's not much farmers left in BC anyways.
Oh, is that the history behind daylight savings?
Yeah,
was to help the farmers?
To help the farmers with when they got to get up in the morning, go to bed, like for the crops and everything.
Wow. Okay. I remember on Saturday night when I dialed my clocks back, I purposely stayed up till 2 o'clock so that, now I'm only going to bed at 1. But man, my body felt like it was 2. I'm like, I'm so tired. I got to go to bed.
Oh, so I woke up early with my kids, and then I'm like, I feel like really rested. I'm like, what's going on? I looked at the clock and my phone said 7:30, and then our stove said 8:30. I'm like, what the frick? And then, forgot that it was the daylight savings. I'm like, shit, I actually had to sleep it.
Yeah, I think we have this discussion every year. We want to get rid of it, or enough people just want to get rid of it. But unfortunately, it's everyone along the Pacific time zone. We all need to be on board. So yeah, Washington, Oregon, and California all need to agree on the same time. So yeah, trying to get the band of brothers together is hard.
Let's get into it, Alex. Today, we're going to be talking about some real estate, but everything we're going to talk about has to do with real estate. But we got a lot of stuff on politics here today. So I hope we don't piss anyone off and we don't piss each other off.
Yeah, unfortunately, politics has ruled the roost north of the border and south. So first off, here in BC, the counts have been done and NDP has won a very slim majority with 47 seats. Conservatives with 44 and the Greens with 2. This is a week after the polls closed and counting of all the mail-in ballots. And even up until the recording of this pod, I was looking on Twitter, or X is what you call it now. They found out that there was one box that was uncounted with 861 votes.
I heard that. I'm like, that's just, I don't understand how we're like, it was so intense. Like they had someone follow me to go and deposit it into like the scanner and everything. I just don't understand how does this stuff still get missed?
Yeah. And we heard reports that some staff were allowed to bring the boxes home to count.
Yeah, that's
Doesn't that destroy the validity of it? Isn't that, it can be tampered with, right?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I hope, obviously, we're not going to get any change. Nothing's going to happen. NDP has won here, but let's hope they listen to what all of BC said, because there was a lot of people that did not want them in power. They're in power. Are they going to do anything, you think, Alex, to listen to the change that people want?
This really has shown that people want change, or they're not happy with what's going on in the province. The Conservatives went from, I don't even know how many seats they had. They probably had almost 0, but they went to almost winning this election. I guess congrats for Conservatives from coming from nothing to being the official opposition. But yeah, the voice of the people have heard. And this is actually the first time in BC history that the NDP has won a 3rd consecutive term.
Surprised by that, because everyone's so pro-union and that's what NDP is all about. And so I'm surprised. I would have thought that it would have been more than that already.
Yeah, I was looking at the map on the voter distribution, and NDP's stronghold was on the island and the Lower Mainland, where all the school, of course, Victoria with government and the schools in the Lower Mainland, and Conservative kind of ruled the rural and Fraser Valley and all the outskirts of the province. So
I'd just be really interested in, I'd love people to, maybe one day we have some people call in or even chat with people. Cause I would just love to hear people's other opinions. Because obviously we know that the NDP is supposed to be for the medical system, for unions. I don't know about you, but I know that every time I go to a hospital now, it is in the worst shape that I have ever seen in my life. The amount of lineups, the amount of everything, I feel like we're in such a bad place for our medical system. And I thought the nurses and the doctors, I thought they would have voted for more of a change. Be like, whatever we're doing, it's not working.
Yeah, I hear like my wife works for a union, and they come hard at the unions, and they
Yeah.
say vote NDP because the NDP
Yeah.
is the
Vote for the
pro-union
union.
party.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like fall in line, do this for your solidarity kind of thing. When it comes to the medical, it really just boils down to money and funding.
Yeah.
We like
Yeah. And
lack of resources because there's lack of funding and all that stuff. But yeah, that's it for the BC election.
it's going to get even harder here. We might not even have any more students for medical, with Ontario planning on banning international students from attending medical school starting in 2026.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that's going to play out.
That's pretty bold from Doug Ford. We know about immigration being a hot topic. We're not slagging on Indian people, but it just happens to be the prevailing culture that's coming in. But yeah, they're just trying to be more of a protectionist movement. Yeah.
Why don't they do like they're saying that it has to be 95% has to go to Ontario residents and 5% from other parts of Canada? Now, for one, are the main doctors, if you go out into your community, are they from Canada? For one, majority of them aren't. But to me, it's why don't we do something like let's give them a benefit to be wanting to come to Canada? Say, hey, we're going to let you in, but hey, you have to guarantee 6 years in Canada after you get your doctor. There's some other stuff that we could be doing here to promote better things than just saying, hey, you're not allowed to come in anymore. I think I saw Seneca College in Ontario, they had to close a satellite office right away because they know that they're not going to have the students.
Yeah, because unfortunately, a lot of colleges have taken advantage of bringing in foreign students because the revenue you bring in is 4 times that of a local resident. So as a business, education institutions, they are a business, so they're there to make money as well. So yeah, that's hurting a lot of the colleges as well. But at the same time, if you are reserving this for local residents, I don't know if we're still having this experience, but we're still getting this brain drain of medical students who graduate here and they don't stay here because there is no benefit.
They don't make enough money.
They earn 2 or 3 times more in the States. Now, easier said than done because it's obviously a different culture and all that stuff, but there's enough that, yes, that's great for Ontario, but you also need to give incentive for the local graduates of the med school graduates to stay and practice in Canada. So
that's where, to me, it's in my eyes, if I was talking about this, I would say, hey, we're going to limit the amount of international students doing it, but we're going to take the revenue from that and it's going to fund our other students to say, hey, if you're a Canadian resident, you do this, we're going to pay 60% of your school. Like that is boom. There we go. We get to use something else, but our government doesn't think that way.
So this isn't one on our agenda, but it comes to mind now that Doug Ford's also doing, and I totally agree with, is he's in the process of removing bike lanes in the city.
I didn't even see that, but I like that. I feel like that's awesome.
Yeah, and not to hate on the bikers there, but in Vancouver, they take away some lanes. In Vancouver, we have this Georgia Viaduct. It used to be 3 lanes. Now it's 1 or 2 as a dedicated lane for a biker. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're just increasing sprawl and gridlock.
Yeah, to me, yeah, it needs to be either like, hey, no, all bike lanes, or it's maybe once Elon Musk figures out the autonomous driving, then at least we'll have some non-gridlock, but we're talking years away.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some crazy things, and I do have to applaud Ontario. Good job, Doug, for doing some bold things, and we hope it works. Well, back over to the West, there's this talking about immigration and such, like a drain on our resources. The Greater Vancouver Food Bank has said that they won't serve first-year international students. That's a big, bold statement there because the federal rules actually require international students to have just over $20,000 saved up on top of their tuition and travel costs in order to come over to Canada and study. That's quite the
cost of living. The cost of living, though, and cost of food has gone up dramatically. But it's very interesting to see that international students have been having to go to food banks. That's not something that I really even thought of.
Yeah, that pretty much just says the symptom of how these reckless policies we have for bringing in too much internationals, not having the resources, and cost of living just skyrocketing, and they've
Yeah.
had to resort to go to the food banks. That's just a symptom of the problem.
I think a lot of people are told a fairy tale from the country that they're coming from. It's all sunshine and rainbows in Canada. It's the world where everything gets given to you. It's free medical. It's everything is nice. And then when people get here, they're like, what? I can't get a job. The food costs X amount. I can't even get in to see a doctor. Why am I here? I'm going back.
Yeah, or rent is super high. The only way to be affordable is I have to an apartment with 4 other people or share a house with 10, 20 other people.
So many people won't rent to some international people and they take advantage of it. They charge them extra. They make them go into bedrooms. That to me is quite disgusting. And yeah, but there is no other way for them to get ahead.
Yeah. The food bank mentioned that the actual proportion of BC post-secondary students visiting food banks has more than doubled in the last 4 years. And that's
insane. That to me is like, why are we not talking about that in politics? That is like a systemic problem. That's just not like a blimp. Hey, this is what happened. It's going to get better. There's something systemically wrong now that we need to fix it. Like, how are this many people not going without food?
Yeah. And then with maybe when they mentioned the last few weeks ago about them slowing down the taps to immigration, hopefully we'll see that go down as well as a part of that. But that's just
that's
par for the course with what's going on.
Is that for internationals, the students? Because they're saying the proportion of BC post-secondary students, is that like a stat for international as well? Or is that just the broad, like every secondary?
Yeah, it was probably the broad thing too. Just it's become untenable here in BC.
Yeah. No,
so,
and it's
something crazy that we found out about the CRA. Do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah. Now, I will say it wasn't specifically because of the CRA didn't get hacked, but an accounting firm got hacked and got everyone's information, and they got a lot of money. And so tell me about it.
Okay, yeah. So they found out in 2023, there was a Canadian taxpayer that logged into his CRA account, falsely amended old tax returns, and wrongly claimed it. And he was owed more than 40 million in refunds. So there was no back
we're talking about something. I'm talking about a different thing. I didn't realize this is what we were talking about. I was talking about another thing. So we'll talk about my other thing after. This is really interesting.
Yeah. This article I found that, so without verifying this, the CRA began making initial payments for that 40 million refund. So they had no checks or balances or any of these red flag systems in place to reach these thresholds. So this was found out through CIBC's Fifth Estate. So that's their consumer investigation show. Now, and it's funny, CRA didn't catch this. It was CIBC noticed, I think it was CIBC was the bank of that fraudster who noticed an unusually large deposit of $10 million.
Where did you get this? I've seen you have negative money for the last 10 years, but hey, you just got a $10 million deposit.
And of course, CIBC is what the hell? So they asked CRA to verify this. Now, only then did CRA realize they've been duped. Like, how the hell they get $10 million? So how the scam works is the person, they registered fake T4A slips that resulted in unwarranted refunds. So it didn't require any verification on CRA's side. So up until now, CRA did not have any policies in place to check on unusually large refunds.
That doesn't make sense to me because I used to have my past business. I had a GST thing and I owed them like $70 and they wouldn't give me my refund because I owed them $70 on there. Like, the amount of paperwork I had to give them to get to that stage. And now I just got to put in some false documents and I would have been a millionaire.
My goodness. If they owe you money, they'll take forever to give you your money back. But you owe them money, they'll come after you with everything.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's where good that they've changed some policies. And now if it's over 50,000, they're going to do some due diligence. I'd probably have that at 25,000. Like,
my goodness.
To me, there should be some pretty easy checks in place to figure out. I want it to be fast because the freaking government's slow, but that's a very easy thing to say. Hey, we need to see your accounting documents to prove that you get this refund.
And it goes to show too, like how the government's all bloated. We have 1 in 4 people work for the government, and a large
They
portion
got
of it
duped.
works for the CRA. We
40
have so
million.
many employees at the CRA.
They got
Ugh.
duped 40 million. Maybe it was one of their brothers or sisters that said,
And
hey,
it's
don't worry.
and it's taxpayer dollars that's happening.
Um,
Now this cannot happen.
Yeah. The story that I thought we were going to talk about when you brought up the CRA is that there's a bunch of refunds that got illegally given out. And that's from an accounting firm got hacked and people were able to get into their CRA account to have their deposits go somewhere else. And so they were meant to get a refund, but let's say you, Alex, you applied for yours. It actually went to somebody else. And it was like, we're in the millions in that. And they're just finding out about it as well. We just got to go and make some fake money to CRA. That's really what everyone's showing us here.
We are one of the most taxed countries in the world, and seeing that CRA can easily be duped to other things, like why are we paying these taxes if it's just going to be we're going to be defrauded as a nation?
It's pretty crazy. And we know, Alex, even ourselves, we used to be able to request documents from CRA to be validated so we could know that we weren't dealing with someone on mortgage fraud. They've taken that away because they say that it's dangerous and they're going to get their information stolen. I would say us be able to prevent that for them is better than what they're doing.
Yeah, we're still vying in our industry to reduce mortgage fraud by having a direct linkage to CRA. We're not asking for all the documents, just line 15,000. If this number matches what it's been filed and it's yes, thumbs up. If not, X. That's all. That'll take away mortgage fraud in one instant. Now, the US does that with the IRS, and they've been doing that for at least 15 years now. Why can't we do that in Canada?
Honestly, I'm going to put on my conspiracy hat here, Alex. I think they know they can do it. I think the banks don't want it to happen. I think the banks know that they make a lot of money from mortgage fraud and they don't want to make it easier. That's my honest take on it.
We heard about TD being slapped with a $3 billion fine a couple of weeks ago from helping launder money, and HSBC not several years back.
They're fine with it. To them, it's pay $3 billion, make 12. Like it's to them, it is chump change in their eyes. And I do hate to say it. I think that they don't want those changes to happen.
Anyways, CRA, get your act together.
I like this one. I remember we talked about it before about how do you feel when you get blackmailed? Is it a nice thing when someone tries to blackmail you and block Quebec? That's what they tried to do to the Liberal government, saying we're only going to not vote in your non-confidence if you do X. Well, that time frame has come up. We have to get the NDP to come in to do a non-confidence vote, even though that he says, saw a video, Singh said he tore up the contract. I've torn up the contract. But every time someone said, do you believe in the government? I tore up the contract. It's
funny. What kind of show are you putting on? Like, there's just a song and dance, but because we know your pension is coming up, it's kicking in February. You're not going to do it until February once you get your pension. We should call this the politics episode.
Has there actually been any real estate talk here on this one?
The government or all these policies, it affects housing in Canada. So yes, we do have to talk about it.
Exactly.
So another thing that rolled out was Pierre Poilievre. He said that if the Conservatives are elected, he will remove the GST on new home construction under 1 million.
Something that could actually move the needle.
Yes. With the Liberals announcing all these fluffy changes over the years, dancing around the edges that really do nothing, that sound like they're doing something, really does nothing. This one might actually move the needle. Now, I would go on and say, how about just removing the GST altogether on new construction? I don't know if they'll do that, but this will definitely move the needle for first-time buyers or entry-level buyers.
And the crazy thing about it, we can make it so that our government doesn't even front the cost of this. In this case, the government is going to have to front this cost, but we could reduce the development fees to make sure that the developers didn't have to bring that onto them. I saw a post in Ontario from, 2013 to 2024, property taxes have gone from $3,000 to $5,000. The development fees went from $8,000 to $65,000 for a condo apartment. That's freaking insane.
Yeah, basically how the government was trying to raise revenue was trying to hide it in development fees. They know they can't get it through if they raise property taxes because there's going to be enough hubbub about it by the homeowners that it won't swing. So how do they do it? They hide it in new construction and development fees because Joe A and Jane, who aren't buying new properties and living in their homes, won't see it.
They don't see
so
it.
the percentage of property taxes increasing is minute compared to development fees. And I saw another stat. It went up in 15 years. Development fees went up close to 1,000%. Used to be $8,000. Now it's 140,000 for development fees.
And that's where I'll give it like this. Like the developers, a lot of them have made some really nice profits. And I do think there is a thing to make sure like that money's going back to something. Again, why don't we say this? Hey, you can only cap your cap rate, the amount of money you make on this at X amount. Any other profit, it's going to go to reduce the cost of the build for first-time home buyers. Put it into a fund that say, hey, any extra profit, we're going to do it as a reduced amount for specific people. There's so many other ways, but then the government doesn't get money.
Alex, you just make too much sense. It can't be government policy because it just makes too much sense.
Exactly. And that's where this one, that was a good one to hear. I'd say even for the conservatives, there's just been like a lot of fluff talking about real estate, but like that one, there's actually change that will help. For one, more people will go look at new construction, which we're trying to get to go, and it's going to save them some money. And
you know what? Either you're hiding under a rock, let's call it a spade. We're pretty sure that Pierre is going to be the next prime minister when that happens. Whether it be the next couple months or next year when it actually happens, if he fulfills that promise in moving, that will move the needle.
Now, what do you think is going to happen here in BC? We have the land transfer tax. And right now, anything below 1.1 million on a new build, you don't have to pay the land transfer tax. But the caveat, you have to pay GST. Yeah. What do you think in this case at 1 million, you wouldn't have to pay that land transfer tax and you don't have to pay GST? I wonder if they would change some of that.
Yeah, that kind of goes against the development cost, right? Having the tax. Now, yeah, that'll definitely, anything that reduces the purchase price and it allows people to qualify and borrow more or have more home on their borrowing dollar, it'll make a difference. So I do have to correct you. It's not no property transfer tax, but there is an exemption for the first 500,000, I think. And then, yeah.
No, so for brand new builds, it's zero. Only for brand new builds.
Okay. I get confused. Too many rules on this and that and stuff. Okay.
But yeah, you are correct on a resale one. Yeah, you're 100% right. But yeah, on a new build, no, as long as it's under 1.1.
The politics doesn't stop in Canada. We have a big thing happening in the States. So we are recording on a Monday night. So tomorrow happens to be the U.S. election night. And it's a pretty big election going on down south, right?
It's a big one. I won't get into the U.S. politics too much here. I won't dip my toe into that dangerous pot, but it's whatever happens over there, it is going to have a ripple effect over here in Canada. And we can even tell a little bit from the bond yields right now. They've gone up a little bit. The Bank of Canada dropped on October 23rd, and bond yields actually went up. And that is to do what's going over in the States. They're still making jobs. Their economy's still doing well. And depends on who gets in, what's going to happen with the market.
Yeah, I think for the housing, the markets is really what I'm keeping an eye on. Like I don't care what your politics are, whether it be you're pro Kamala or pro Trump. How will the markets react? The bond markets as well as the stock markets, because that'll affect housing on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be a big one.
And that's let's not even say who gets in, but like, what do you think happened? What's your worst case scenario? What do you think happens to the markets?
Yeah, I think bond markets go up depending on who the president is, based on what their policies
are. That's pretty much what I feel.
For taxation or whatever. And it gets shot up. Now it could eventually go down. And depending on who gets voted in, a bunch of Americans be like, oh, I'm going to move to Canada. That always happens. Or I'm going to move somewhere else. Okay. I'm like, no, don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't.
Just so people understand, when other industries, the stock market's not doing good, people pull out of that and they go into the bonds because it's a guaranteed return. When bonds go up higher, fixed rate mortgages are pushed up higher because that's how the banks have to borrow money that way. And in our case, for investors, having a higher bond yield is nice, but for interest rates, it's actually not good.
Speaking of rates, we just want to give a quick rate update since the Bank of Canada cut a couple weeks ago. Fixed rates hasn't moved, but I think they are taking a wait and see how this U.S. election pans out.
Look at the news though, is man, the Bank of Canada is saying like 0.5% in December, 0.5% in January. Holy smokes. Like that, like the forecast from what we talked about even 6 months ago, it's changed so dramatically.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's changed. There was an article, a City Financial Economist did predict December and a January 50 cut each. So that accelerates our forecast, where a few episodes ago, we talked about rates probably another 1.5% to go from where it is now to where the terminal is, the terminal being the end point. But that 1.5 could be a lot sooner than we thought, and it could go more than 1.5.
I feel like cutting that drastically. We went up so fast, and now we have to like I push Big Tiff to like potentially look at let's get these down, but like if we do this too fast, it could just push us back into a crazy housing market. Everything goes back up. I feel like we're teetering on a bit of a piss that way.
Yeah, even rates coming down 1.25% from when they started in the summer, it hasn't fueled the market like people thought it would.
It's like, it does give them I feel like people are waiting for more. And I have so many people that are on the edge right now. And yeah, if there was a 0.5% cut, people are jumping. Like there is no doubt.
Yeah, the 1.25% is great, but it almost seemed like it needed to come down 2% for it to make a difference in people's lives. Like it's great, but it's still not good enough. And we talked about this before, where we're now have a divergence of two different buyers. They still can't qualify, and they're waiting for more rate cuts to happen. The other buyer, when rate cuts happen, is because the economy is not doing well. When the economy is not doing well, job losses happen. And if you're in a vulnerable industry, you're worried whether you're going to have your job next week. If you're worried about that, you're not going to make any major financial decision.
I'll bring something up about that. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett, they're sitting on, what was the number, like 300 billion or something in cash. It's the most money that they've ever had before, prepared to go and launch it. And they've talked about buying into real estate, but it's just showing what people are doing. There is people waiting because they know that there's a point, and it's when people are in a bad situation, that's when people get deals. You can come and say, hey, you just lost your job. Hey, I'll buy your house for 500K. It used to be worth 700.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part when recession happens. There's opportunity, but yes, on the other end, some people lose their jobs and lose their shirt. So it does happen. Hopefully you're not one of them.
I feel like we've beat this one down with a bit of a horse as well, Alex, but I think people really need to pay attention to this, that if you have a fixed rate mortgage in the above 5.5% in the last year or two, you need to go and speak with a mortgage professional, your bank. You could still be sitting at 3 months interest for your mortgage penalty. Quick scenario for someone.
Yeah.
Oh, I showed someone a scenario at 800K mortgage and what they were going to save, even with having to pay a penalty of $12,000 over 2 years, they're going to save $34,000 in interest.
No, that's
a
amazing.
Great thing. I was actually able to get them go back to the current lender, get their penalty replaced from them, and save the money. And so it was just really good for me to show them that. And there is going to be a time where that penalty goes from $12,000 to $30,000. And that's where at least just get someone to look at it for you does not mean you need to do anything.
I recently did one where they were on a 3-year fixed at 6.31. And I did their mortgage last year because they had no choice. That was the best option at the time because rates were 6.5, 7. And
at least you put them in a 3-year term.
Yeah, 3-year term.
Put them in a 5-year term.
Exactly. 3-year term was the way to go. And we're like, let's kick the can down the road, live to fight another day. And I guess another day has come sooner than we thought.
Yeah.
And we were able to break. They did go into variable, and based on the trajectory, despite paying the 3-month interest penalty, I saved them $4,700 in interest. So look into it. If you need help, contact us.
Yeah, there's easy ways. Honestly, we don't need your income documents. We don't need your name. We just need to see a mortgage rate, the day that you got the mortgage, the term you got, and we can run a quick calculation for you. Every lender looks at stuff differently. And the big thing I like to say, your bank that you're at is not going to call you and say, hey, guess what? You could break your mortgage and save money.
All right, that was a pretty action-packed show. We don't have time for viewing mailbag today. We're going to save that for another time. So on behalf of my co-host Alex Shanks, I'm Alex Pang. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Talk to you later.
Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to follow us. Please give us a 5-star rating. You can even send us an email because we want to know what you guys want to hear about. That's what we're here for. Reach out anytime.